This Kawasaki ZZR1400 is an absolute beast. It produces 210 horsepower at the crank and 160 newton meters of torque. That is an awful lot of power for two wheels. But if I'm being perfectly honest with you, all that doesn't really matter. This motorcycle, everyone, is a genuine marvel of motorcycle engineering. Seriously, you get torque and horsepower, not to mention the fact that you also get a top speed of 186 miles an hour stock. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous, and I can see how that can be really attractive to people who are looking to buy motorcycles, you know? They get all enthralled and all drawn in by the power, by the top speed. I mean, you guys always know me. I've always preferred torque to horsepower on motorcycles. I think it's far more usable on when it comes to street riding anyway. I love seeing the sheep. These aren't wild, by the way. I mean, I don't know if there is such thing as wild sheep, but they're very sweet nonetheless. There's a traffic jam of sheep. Oh, little sweeties. But yeah, everyone, if there's one thing that I've learned this year, when it comes to horsepower and torque and all the spec sheet numbers, for the most part, they don't actually really make too much impact on the riding experience of the bike. Yeah, that's one of the things that I've perhaps discovered the most this year. It's our first year we've been able to do lots of ride reviews and really see what's out there in the motorcycle market right now. And there's a lot to choose from. And one of the first things that you look at is the spec sheet. And I'm not gonna lie, that's the first thing that attracted me to this motorcycle right here, the ZZR1400. But I think this bike is actually quite unique, because yes, it produces horsepower and torque that is very attractive to a prospective buyer, but the experience is there to match as well. And I think that's one thing that I try to translate as much as possible whenever we're doing our ride reviews. Whenever I'm riding any bike whatsoever, I try translating the experience that I'm having in the cockpit to you guys watching. And that is quite a difficult thing to do, especially when you've got a motorcycle that you think, well, this shouldn't be as fun as it is. But the one thing I want you to take away from this video is that torque, horsepower, specs, top speed, all that stuff, that isn't the whole picture. And I don't want you looking away from a motorcycle because it doesn't have the performance numbers you think it should have. Don't be disappointed by the performance numbers that a particular motorcycle may have, because it may totally surprise you. The experience may outclass the spec sheet. Some perfect examples, I'll name them right now, because these bikes were the inspiration behind this video. And it's only when I get on the ZZR is when I realise how much of a special bike this actually is. Even though it's got the horsepower, it's got the torque, it has the experience to match. But motorcycles like the MT-09 from Yamaha, the XSR900 GP from Yamaha, the Ninja 650, the Ninja 1000 SX from Kawasaki, both the Ninja 650 and the 1000 SX from Kawasaki. These bikes, in my mind, really highlight what a lot of riders could be missing out on if they looked at a spec sheet and thought, you know what, that's going to be a boring bike. And believe me, I've ridden motorcycles that are far more boring than them, on a significant level more boring, with similar specs. And I suppose I can chuck in the Aprilia RS660 into that bunch as well. That bike really surprised me how good it was. I seriously enjoyed riding that bike. But bikes like these, I get worried that they're overlooked, especially because the Ninja 650, the RS 660, they're parallel twins competing in a market where there's still plenty of used inline 4 600cc super sports that they're trying to compete with. And no, okay, they're not on the level of an R6 or a CBR 600RR, but they are incredibly good, and if anything, they make better street bikes than those super sports do, surprisingly enough. Genuinely, guys, that's how surprised I was riding those bikes. The experience was so much more than I expected. Yes, there are disappointing bikes like the Yamaha R7. I really did expect more from that bike, and I said a lot of crap about it, but thing is, at the end of the day, none of all that matters. What matters is that whether or not it puts a smile on your face. So even if I don't particularly like a motorcycle, and bearing in mind I try to be as open-minded as possible whenever I'm getting on a motorcycle, I do look at the spec sheet and the price, but all of that is just for your information. What I'm there for is to figure out what the experience is truly like. And if the experience is better than what the spec sheet would imply, then I will say that outright. If the experience is worse than the spec sheet would imply, then I will say that as well. And for me, I think that is truly the case with the Yamaha R7. It really isn't on the same playing field as bikes like the Ninja 650 or the Aprilia RS 660. It really isn't, despite the fact that those are the motorcycles that it is competing against in the space. We've got a slow scooter ahead of us, that's always fun, isn't it? But that's the thing, guys, as well. If you are interested in a particular bike and you've seen one of our ride reviews and, you know, you disagree or you're skeptical of what I've said, then that's really good. Go and test ride it and figure it out for yourself. But don't knock or don't ignore the other bikes that I reviewed that are in the same class. Alright? Because trust me, if you did test ride one of those, then that'll put it into perspective what I'm talking about. You may disagree, and it may end up really putting a smile on your face. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, and fair play. If that's the motorcycle you like, then great. No one can take that away from you. It's like all the people that say in the comments about the ZX2 what an ugly bike it is and all that stuff. Yeah, that's fair enough. If you don't like the look of it, great, that's up to you. But me, I really do like the look of it. Or at least, it wasn't, the look of it wasn't enough to deter me from buying it. A little bit like the MT-09. I truly think that's an ugly bike. A seriously ugly bike. But that wouldn't deter me from actually buying one because the experience is so good. The ZX2, I think, is one of those motorcycles that I think everyone kind of understands that the experience is truly there with that bike. That bike is awesome on every level. It's comfortable, it's got buckets of horsepower, buckets of torque, it's an absolute wheelie monster. That bike, the experience is truly second to none. A little bit like the ZZR here. But to be fair, I would rank the ZH2's experience higher than the ZZR. But despite the fact that ZZR is producing more torque and more horsepower than the ZH2. See, it's funny the way how things like that work, isn't it? But another example, the MT-10, I knew that bike was going to be very good. But I genuinely thought that the gap between the MT-09 and the MT-10 from Yamaha was going to be significant. Considering the MT-10 is producing a load more torque and a load more horsepower than the MT-09. But that is far from the truth. The experience of both of those bikes is truly outstanding. Seriously outstanding. Let's see if this road's opened up, shall we? Looks like it might have. What are you waiting for? Had me second guessing myself then. Yeah, the gap between those two bikes in terms of experience is very narrow. I would give it to the MT-10 just, but That MT-09, if you bought an MT-09, you would not be disappointed, seriously. And that bike is significantly cheaper than the MT-10. But genuinely, guys, if a motorcycle puts a smile on your face, that is all that matters, no matter what anybody says. I'm talking about the R7. I did get a lot of stick for my ride review of that bike, and fair enough. I mean, riding experience is totally subjective, really, to be honest with you. But it's not that I didn't like it. I actually did enjoy riding it. It's one of those experiences where, yes, I enjoyed it, but compared to the other bikes I've ridden, there seemed to be something missing, and I'm not sure if that came across on camera, but I did enjoy riding it thoroughly. And I do think it would make a great motorcycle for a lot of people, especially those who are more beginners. Then yeah, it's a really good motorcycle to look at. But when it comes to bikes like this, the ZZR, when it comes to even bikes within Yamaha's own roster, bikes like the ZX-14R GP, which I'm guessing the R9 is going to be based on, it is on another world better than what the R7 could provide, which is a real shame. I had seriously high hopes for the R7, and hopefully in the near future we'll get to have a go on an MT-07, because that is really what that engine was made for an MT-07. So we'll see if that is any better or not than the R7. But yeah, it did feel like it was a motorcycle that it didn't know what it wanted to be, you know? Didn't have quite the horsepower to be a super sport. It didn't quite have the torque to be like a naked. So yeah, I think it was a confused bike. But honestly, if you like the R7 and you really enjoy the R7, that's great. That's really good. Because the one thing the R7 has got going for it are the looks, man. The looks of the bike are impeccable. I absolutely I adore the look of the R7. It is just a real shame that it really doesn't match the experience of its predecessor, the R6. Now I say that because here in the UK and Europe we can't buy an R6 anymore. The R6 is gone off the market. We can't buy it from new. So the R7, in terms of middleweight supersports from Yamaha, the R7 is the only option we have. I'm sure in the United States and other countries around the world, an R6 rather, can still be bought. But yeah, that's just the situation we're in here in Europe. Unfortunately, you know, emission standards are absolutely killing motorcycle manufacturers and motorcycle lineups, motorcycle rosters. We've had a lot of casualties over the last few years, pretty much since 2021, or it might have been 2022. But yeah, a lot of casualties, and it sucks. But hey ho, there is still the used market, so if you are looking for a super sport, a middleweight super sport, and you're looking between something like an R7 or an R6, there are plenty of options right now if you're looking to buy an R6. So yeah, definitely go and check it out if that's what you're looking to buy, and compare the two yourself. But yeah, I don't think an R7 has got anything on the R6, or any 600 Super Sport for that matter, despite the fact that that's how it was named. You know, I'm trying to justify the way how I felt about that motorcycle, but yeah, it really doesn't matter, everybody, seriously. The most important thing is that the bike puts a smile on your face. If it makes you happy when you're riding it, then that's absolutely fantastic. For me, it's not about whether or not a motorcycle puts a smile on my face, it's how big the smile is. Because like I said, I enjoy every motorcycle. I love riding, and any bike I've ever ridden, I've enjoyed it. Even 125s that I've ridden before in the past, I've thoroughly enjoyed riding them. And I look to have a go on more A2 bikes as well, hopefully in the near future, because I think they are quite underrated motorcycles in a lot of ways as well, because everyone's looking for that next step up. But there is, I think, a case to be made for A2 motorcycles as a long-term motorcycle purchase, seriously. Bikes like the Z400, for example, and I have no doubt the Z500 is going to be on a very similar kind of playing field. Very, very good bikes, fantastic bikes. And I suspect the same goes for the Ninja 400 and 500 as well. Very, very good bikes. I can't recommend them enough for a lot of riders, not just experienced ones, not just A2 riders, not just beginner riders. For a lot of riders, I would recommend a motorcycle like a Z400. Again, the experience was very, very positive, very, very good. So it is just one of those things, guys. A lot of this is all subjective, and I think if I'm being totally responsible and totally honest as a content creator and motorcycle reviewer, don't just look at our motorcycle reviews, have a look at others as well. I'm sure a lot of you do anyway if you're looking to buy that particular motorcycle that we are reviewing. But honestly, don't be afraid to have a look at other motorcycle reviews and compare the findings. I think you'll find that a lot of reviews will be very, very similar, at least in the sentiment anyway, in the attitude towards a particular motorcycle. I think it's going to be very similar. But yeah, man, that's the thing about motorcycles. They are all about fun factor. It doesn't matter what bike it is, if it's a cruiser, if it's, I don't know, an adventure bike or a touring bike or a super sport, naked, whatever the bike might be. They are all designed for having fun, all of them. And I suppose it really just depends on, one, how much fun it is to you as the rider when you ride it for yourself, how much fun it is for you, but also the amount, what you consider fun. Do you know what I mean? Like, someone like me, for example, would consider a motorcycle like this incredibly fun because it produces a ton of torque. And that is what I like in my bikes, that's what I like in my motorcycles. I like to have plenty of torque to play with and load out in the RPMs. Some riders might not prefer that, some riders might prefer top end horsepower. And there's lots of super sports out there that provide that experience. It really does depend on what you want, and riding bikes, it is a journey for the most part, trying to figure out what kind of experiences you prefer. Some people like less horsepower, some people are afraid of too much torque, so they like the smaller bikes. They like bikes like the R7 because it gives them a very sporty experience without having to worry about a load of crazy torque or a load of crazy horsepower at the top end. But you still get that sporty experience. Like the ZX-14R, I think that is a very, very good motorcycle in terms of riding experience because it doesn't have a lot of torque. It does have a nice punch at the top end of its rev range, where it's producing maximum horsepower, but you're not going a ridiculously fast speed. So you're really able to enjoy the bike without having to worry about getting speeding tickets. That's another potential customer for those kinds of bikes. People who don't want to have to worry so much about how fast they're going. That's the thing, guys. There are so many different types of riders out there and so many different types of experiences that people want. And I think that's what all these motorcycle manufacturers have taken into account. They have taken into account the type of rider they think is going to ride that particular motorcycle. And just because I'm one of those riders that might not see who the audience is, it doesn't mean that the manufacturers haven't thought of that. So yeah, it is an art and a science, designing motorcycles, building motorcycles, knowing who the motorcycle is for. I think is one of the first things at the top of the list when they're designing a new bike. They think, who is this motorcycle going to be for? Or where do they need a motorcycle in the space? Are there any riders that a motorcycle manufacturer is kind of ignoring at the moment? Or maybe they don't have enough bikes to fill out the roster in that particular area. That's pretty much how it goes. So I have no doubt that there are lots of bikes that I would consider maybe a little bit more boring, that a lot of other people would find absolutely amazing. And that is really what it comes down to, guys. Do you enjoy it? Do you like riding the bike? That's all that matters. But do use our reviews and other people's ride reviews of particular bikes to get a decent idea of what it's going to be like to ride that bike. All right, so you get you know, so it might be one of those things where you might see a reviewer that you trust and they give it a bad rap or something like that, and it's like, that might put you off the bike, but don't be afraid to go and test ride one. You can go to a dealership, test ride a brand spanking new motorcycle and see if it's for you, like the R7 for example. Go and test ride a brand new R7. Doesn't matter if you can afford it or not, just go and test ride it, see if it's for you, and then look at one that's in your price range. That's the best thing to do. Yes, there are going to be some motorcycles, especially here in Europe, that you will not find anymore, at least from new, so they're not doing any demos of those bikes from new. But you should be able to find another manufacturer that is making a very similar bike, like for example the 600cc class. You could ride the R6, the CBR 600RR, an R6 and a Gixxer 600. You can ride all those bikes and get a pretty good idea of what it's going to be like for the actual bike you're looking to buy. And that's really the best thing to do, guys. If you really want to confirm for yourselves what you think a motorcycle is going to be like to ride, then test ride it. That's my best advice. Test ride one before you buy. But there you have it, everybody. I hope that this video has made sense, and I hope that it comes across a little bit more, what's the word? A little gentler, I suppose, when it comes to the ride reviews and things like that. And why a lot of it doesn't matter. The spec sheet, what other people say, a lot of it doesn't really matter. It really comes down to what you like and what you prefer in a motorcycle, what you want in a motorcycle. That is all that matters. But thank you ever so much for joining me on today's wet ride. There's been some pretty bad weather over the last few days, so I haven't had much of a chance to get out and ride, unfortunately. I've been itching to get out on the bikes, but I have had to take a little bit of a break from doing the ride reviews as well. I'm hoping just temporarily, because Completely is changing their operating procedures when it comes to demos and things like that, so I'm just waiting. They confirmed that they're happy for me to continue doing the test rides of the bikes, but I think they're just sorting out the processes first before they let me have a go on them again. I'm hoping that next week I'll be able to get another ride review out for you guys. But yeah, thank you ever so much for watching this video. As always, go ahead, leave that like, hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so you don't miss any more of our videos on the awesome Kawasaki ZZR1400. And we will catch you all in the next video, everyone. Take care, ride safe.